Hello and welcome everyone to today's conversation on coaching certification. Very excited to have each and every one of you here, and thank you actually for the time you are investing in exploring your options for coaching certification, what it means, how it works, and of course checking out the Center for Coaching Certification. So ideally, today's conversation is going to answer your questions. A few of you have submitted questions ahead of time. I think we've done a great job of building in the answers to the presentation. And of course, I'll take questions as we go. So sometimes what happens is I have somebody that's super brave and they say, hey, I want to come on live. I'm going to raise my hand and ask a question. And we can actually unmute you and you can come on live and ask your question. Alternatively, a lot of people really like the ease of typing in your question to the question panel. We will monitor that as we go. So definitely watching for that. Some of you have already said you want to know, hey, am I going to be able to access this after the fact? And the answer is yes. We record this and we will put the recording on our YouTube channel. All of you that are registered here will be given a chance to have a link to that YouTube recording so you can go back and see it again. In addition to that, I do have something. Those of you that are checking out coaching certification, finding out what it is and how it works, at the end of today's conversation, I've got something for you. And I am already seeing, Deanna, you've got your hand up. It may be that it's counterintuitive because when you have your hand, if there's a picture of a green arrow, it means that you click that to put it up, and if there's a picture of red arrow, you click that to put it down. So, all right, I think you got that figured out. We're set and good to go. Let's dive into what we are talking about today. So of course, your objective is learning about coaching certification, how it works, what happens, etc. So we are going to start out by defining coaching. What exactly is this that we're all talking about? We'll share some industry statistics and insights, just some exciting pieces of information that are readily available and worth being aware of. Then we're going to walk you through the Center for Coaching Certification Staircase to Success, which provides a model. Hey, what is this coaching relationship? How does it work? And then we also are going to provide a visual of the coaching process itself and describe that. We will talk pros and cons of coaching certification. Of course, I want to say, yeah, it's all pros, and realistically, yeah, of course there are cons too. So we'll discover that. Look at reasons people choose certification at the Center for Coaching Certification. We'll talk about what to look for in a coach training program wherever you decide to go, what the opportunities are for you as a coach, and then of course we're going to go through a good overview of both the certified professional and certified master coach classes with the Center for Coaching Certification. So diving into this agenda, the definition of coaching. This comes, by the way, from the International Coach Federation. I am going to share some more information on that organization in just a moment. So let's start with reading the definition and really be observant of the language, the words. What does it mean when they choose that word to define coaching? So whether you're talking executive, career, business, health, or life coaching, it is, I love this word, strategic, and then it says partnership. Strategic partnership, that's different than other professional roles. You see, typically when you hire a professional, you hire them for their expertise, and they're the ones who are giving you the advice and telling you something. Well, in coaching, it's a partnership because the client ultimately is their own best expert. The coach is there in terms of the process. So when we say strategic partnership, that's what we're talking about. And then it goes on and further explains in which the coach empowers the client. That means the coach really is there as a partner supporting the client in what they're doing. And then it goes on, the client to clarify goals, create action plans, move past obstacles. So it is the client that is doing that. The coach's role in that process is listening, being a sounding board, expanding thinking, challenging thinking, exploring perspectives, and ultimately partnering with that client as they go through the process. The client's role is to decide on their own goals, design their own action plans, figure out how they will move past their obstacles, and then ultimately achieve what they, the client, chooses. So it's truly about putting that individual client in the role of being their own best expert, because ultimately they are. All right, awesome. Love that definition. So I mentioned I'd share more about the International Coach Federation, where that definition came from. So a couple of things. First off, they are a nonprofit. It is a professional membership organization. They are what we call the gold standard in terms of coaching. They provide us with the code of ethics. They hold members accountable to the code of ethics. They also provide standards. They approve training programs, and they also have standards for membership. They have a very specific process for credentialing of coaches. So ultimately, the International Coach Federation is what we deem our self-regulating body. So what does that mean to all of you? Well, bottom line, right now, anyone can call themselves a coach. Literally, if my dog wants to say she's a coach and somebody will hire her, she's in business, whether or not she's done anything else. So ultimately, what happens with all professions as we go through a growth process is we either figure out how to self-regulate or government regulates. So if you think about that, doctors have gone through that, attorneys, financial planners, human resource professionals, etc. And that's where coaching is at. So as coaches, we're in that stage of self-regulation, and the International Coach Federation is our self-regulating body. So hopefully that helps clarify who they are. Let's move in. We said we were going to talk some various statistics and quotes, etc. on coaching. This one comes from Right Management. And they said, when companies are using coaching, what's the reason? Well, 86% of the time, it's to sharpen the skills of individuals who are targeted as future leaders. So they're looking at their high potential people and providing coaching. It's kind of like saying, hey, you got the corner office with the window, you have arrived, we're going to pay for a coach for you. Now, another one, Denison Consulting calls coaching the organizational development tool of choice for both leaders and emerging leaders. What's the reason it's a tool of choice? Because it works, because of the power of what coaching does for people. As a profession, and this comes from Ray Williams, it is the second fastest growing profession in the world. And of course you all want to know, okay, so what's the fastest? Well, it's IT, information technology. That makes sense. So second fastest growing profession in the world. That's exciting. And it goes back to, what's the reason? It works. Fortune magazine did an article, and based on what they have in that article, they looked at a number of different studies on the return on investment for coaching. And in summary, what they said, look at that last sentence, 6 times what the coaching costs the companies. So when we say it works, they're saying the same thing. It works. The payoff, the return on investment, 6 times the cost, 600% return on investment. Okay, wait a minute. Think about that. When you talk that kind of return on investment, how can people afford not to have a coach? That's incredible. It's amazing. So let's dig into it even further. If a company is going to hire a coach, what are the reasons they're going to hire a coach? Harvard Business Review did a study on this. And here's what they said, very much in keeping with what you saw with Right Management. They said 48% of the time it is because they are developing high potentials or facilitating a transition. Usually it's something going on with leadership and they're facilitating that process. So again, very much, hey, this is a bonus. This is a benefit in terms of the workplace. Now, another interesting piece of that is that 26% of the time, a coach is there to act as a sounding board. When you really think about it, this makes a lot of sense. In the corporate space, when you have your high-level executives, it's tough for them to have a chance to think out loud, to brainstorm, because if they say something, somebody's going to take it as that being what it is, and they're still figuring that out. So executive coaches do often serve as a sounding board. They listen, they rephrase, they expand thinking, they challenge thinking, they explore different perspectives, and it really supports that executive being effective in what they are deciding to do. Now, an interesting number that came out of this, people used to think, oh, well, if you have a coach, there's something wrong. Think about it. When a company provides a coach for someone, it is because they want to keep that person. There's an investment involved in having a coach. So 12% of the time, the coach is there to address a derailing behavior. What does that mean? It means you have somebody in a leadership role. They're really good at the work, and they want to make them more effective in terms of what's going on with their interactions with others. So that's where that 12% comes from. Now, an interesting number came out of this particular study. Harvard Business Review said 76% of the time in these engagements, personal issues get addressed. Now, people sometimes say, okay, well, this coaching is about work, it's about the job, and the company's paying, and it's only supposed to be about the job. And at the same time, here's what we all realize. Whatever's going on for somebody, it comes to work with them. So when they're dealing with challenges personally, professionally, financially, health, whatever it is, it comes to work. So when you have a coach, there is an opportunity to address that personal challenge, and because they address it, it means they're more effective on the job. So I believe this number is actually higher and continuing to increase. The study was done a number of years ago. Now, let's look at another one. If an individual is going to hire a coach, what are their reasons for doing that? The International Coach Federation did a study on that, and here's what they came up with. Number one reason, career coaching. It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. You have people graduating from college, they're more aware of coaching and what it is, they've been exposed to it, they have a positive sense about it, and they're figuring out, hey, how do I really get myself into the career I want? And having a coach makes a lot of sense. You also have a lot of people who have experienced burnout, or they've experienced being downsized or right-sized, however you want to call that. And they're going, okay, now where do I go? So career coaching is a big area. Then you've got business management. A lot of people starting small businesses are really great at the product or the service. And what's missing is, how do I effectively build this business, grow it, make it sustainable, etc.? And so the business management coaching is a big area. Now, interesting that this comes out, self-esteem, and at the same time makes a ton of sense. Think about it. When you ask people, what is the number one thing holding you back, more often than anything else, you're going to hear themselves. And it's that confidence in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So it's a huge benefit of coaching that you're developing that self-esteem and that confidence. Now, another big one, a buzzword we've been hearing for a long time, and that is work-life balance. So yeah, we're working longer hours, harder, doing more with less, etc. How do we get to a point where it's giving us a balance that works with everything else we have going on in our world? Okay, so this is the reason for people hire a coach. Let's dig even further. Back to that impact. So we shared the Fortune magazine article. Here's one of the studies I'm guessing they looked at. It is the most often cited or amongst the most often cited when you look at different articles on coaching. It was a study done by Manchester Inc. And there's that number again, 570% return on investment. Wow. So, and great question here. When they do a 570% return on investment, where does that number come from? There are a couple of considerations. One is what we call quantitative data, where you can really look at a bottom line numbers and dollar value. For example, when a company has a high turnover rate, they know how much it costs them to replace employees, the loss in productivity, everything else involved. And so when they reduce that turnover as a result of a specific service, such as coaching, they can figure out, okay, the service cost is this much, we have this savings in terms of that turnover, and so they can look at the return on investment. A lot of different places where you can get quantitative data. One of my favorite, Triad Performance Technologies, did a study on coaching in telecommunications sales, and they cited 1,000% return on investment, and it was purely based on sales numbers. Pretty tough to argue that one. It was all quantitative. Now, in most of these other studies, you also have what we call qualitative data. You see, it's pretty tough when you improve somebody's communication skills or people skills, emotional intelligence, how they interact, etc. How do you assign a dollar value to that? Well, we know the implications in the workplace in terms of turnover, productivity, etc. How do you really put a dollar value on that? And so there are qualitative measures, and what they do is they figure out, okay, this is the dollar value we're assigning, and this is what it's based on. So when you read the studies, they will explain where these numbers come from. Now, a separate study looking at something different was on productivity. And here's what they said. When you do a training program, you're going to increase productivity by just over 22%. That's pretty exciting. And then look at this. When you do training and coaching, you get an 88% improvement, 4 times the impact on productivity. Wow. And what's the reason for that? Well, think about it. It goes back to what coaching is. You see, when you do training, you're giving people information. When you follow that up with coaching, you are asking them, okay, what'd you get out of that? What of that do you want to apply in your environment? How are you going to do that? What's your plan? And then checking in with them. How are you doing with it? So that's where you get that 4 times the impact in terms of adding coaching. This study, by the way, was done by Public Personnel Management. Okay, so let's keep going. When people choose an individual coach, so let's say you decide, I'm going to be a coach, and you go through training, you put yourself out there. How are they going to decide you're the coach for them? Harvard Business Review said they're going to look at 2 main things. One is experience in a similar setting. Okay, so experience in a similar setting. Are you going to get that by taking a class? No. That's what you already have. You're coming to the table with a wealth of experience and expertise. You've worked in different environments. You've developed expertise in different areas. That's what they're talking about, the experience you have. They also want to know you have a clear methodology. That's what comes out of training, that you have a process. You know what you're doing as a coach. Many of us have made the mistake of doing coaching without training, and it was bottom line ineffective at best. So ultimately, do you really know what you're doing as a coach? That's where you get your training. So let's look at a model for what that coaching relationship is. And this is developed at the Center for Coaching Certification as a way of really illustrating how the coaching relationship works. So compare the coaching relationship to a staircase. And imagine you're going to build that staircase. Well, if you're going to build a staircase, what's the first thing you do? Well, you frame out the base of the staircase so that you have a place to put the steps. Well, in a coaching relationship, what is that framework, that base? It involves three components. First off, yes, you're training. Anytime you are a profession providing a professional service, yes, training is going to be there. It makes sense. And with that training, you are developing your competency in that area. Now, in coaching, there are 11 core competencies that you want to develop. We'll go through those in a few minutes. So developing your competency as a coach, and then also having a code of ethics. And yes, most people come into this saying, I'm ethical, I'm good, it's great. Absolutely. And we don't know what we don't know. There are some very significant considerations when you look at a code of ethics for coaching that it's important to know about and be ready with. So that's our foundation, our base for the staircase in a coaching relationship. Now we're ready to start building the steps. And what's the first step in the coaching relationship? It's an agreement between the coach and the client. Sometimes we also have what we call a sponsor agreement, where the coach is signing an agreement with the company paying for coaching. That is different than the agreement with the client, because the client is the individual being coached. Now, to have an agreement in place in coaching, it's actually a two-part process. Part of it is the conversation. Hey, what is coaching? How does it work? What happens in this relationship, and discussing it. And then when you are going to take that step, you want a part two written agreement. And that written agreement defines the roles, the process, all of the pieces to what's happening in this coaching relationship. Now, once that step is in place, you're ready for your next step. It is incumbent on the coach to understand the client. Who are they? How do they think? How do they process? How do they function? So that the coach then knows how to flex the process to the individual client. So the next step in this relationship is developing that understanding. And from there, you're going to develop rapport. And ultimately, rapport is the #1 indicator of success in a coaching relationship. What's it based on? Well, yes, absolutely. It starts with the client knowing the coach has the code of ethics from that core framework and the competency in this process. It's further enhanced with that agreement. And then, of course, when the coach is adjusting the process, because they understand the client, that makes it more comfortable for the client. So it all works together and supports that step of rapport. And with that rapport, you've opened the door for really effective communication. The coach really hearing the client, what they're saying, what they're not saying, language that is clear, direct, positive, and proactive, and then questions that are powerful. And that in turn supports the step of exploration. Back to your definition, the client is exploring what their opportunities and possibilities are. They're defining what their different obstacles or challenges are, figuring out how they're moving past them, designing their own actions and game plan, and then ultimately developing their strategy that they implement with the coach as an accountability partner. And that step takes the client to the doorway we call success, and that success is defined by the client. So that's a model of the coaching relationship. Now let's look at what the actual process is in a coaching engagement. So think about it this way. Before you even start the coaching relationship, back to the agreement having two parts, having the conversation, well, the coaching process itself is very similar. So typically before you start a coaching engagement, you have what we call an introductory session. This is before you've signed on, if you will. It's a chance for the client to check out the coach, for the coach to make sure they are going to be effective working with that individual client, for the two of them to see, hey, are we going to be able to develop this rapport together? And then once you've done that introductory session and the client says, yeah, I like this works, and you both decide, yeah, we're going to be effective together, then you sign your agreement and you move into what we call an opening session. Now, very smart in a coaching relationship that opening session be a big picture exploration. What does the client want? What do they want in all the different areas of their world? Because they're going to have competing priorities. They're going to have influencing factors. So that big picture exploration develops the awareness and helps prioritize. From there, in the next session, how is the client going to maintain their focus and fully engage in moving toward their own goals and ensuring that there's a tool in place, a process in place that supports that? On an ongoing basis in the coaching relationship, as the coach gets together with the client each session, they have the client prioritize, hey, what do you want to focus on and work on? And then the client is strategizing. They're developing and refining their action plan. And the coach is checking in with them. Hey, how are you doing? Are you staying on track with that? And of course, are you acknowledging yourself for your successes along the way? And this continues. There will be a time when the coach and client are saying, okay, we've gone as far as we can go together. The client is feeling complete, they're ready to move on, etc. The average length of a coaching relationship is 12 months, by the way. So what does that mean? Well, as you get to that point, you want to make sure as a coach that you're supporting the client in terms of being set up for the long term. How are they going to maintain their progress, their success, and continue to build on it? And then in a closing session, reviewing what they did accomplish in this coaching engagement, their strategy for continuing and moving forward. And ironically, we call it a closing session. It's also about making sure the door is open so that if and when the client wants to come back for another session or more, they know that's an option for them. So that's a diagram of the coaching process itself. All right, now let's dig into certification. Pros, cons, what are they? First off, the question, hey, does coaching training actually matter? And it's, to me, amazing we even ask the question, what other profession are you going to ask that of? Are you going to ask a psychiatrist if training matters? Of course not. Yes, it matters. Coach training does matter. How much? Well, we're still learning. Now, again, this study was done a number of years ago, so I believe these numbers are changing. That's what I'm seeing in my world. So when you hire a coach, 29.2% said certification is very important. Well, at that time, there were another 28.5% saying it doesn't matter at all. Think about it. We see a lot of big names out there saying, hey, yeah, I'm a coach. They're not really. They're mentoring, they're consulting. They don't even know what coaching is. And because they're a big name, they do a contract and they provide great mentoring and consulting services. And what's happening there is people are saying, okay, well, you know, that's okay. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter. And then you've got everyone else in between, and they're saying, well, it's a little bit important. Yeah, it's important. And it varied in terms of how much value they assigned to certification. So when you crunch those numbers, you've got 70+% assigning value to coaching certification. And that number is growing because it's become, unfortunately, a buyer beware. There are a lot of people calling themselves a coach who don't even know what coaching is. And so, yes, increasingly, there is value attached to that certification as a coach. Now let's go into a personal decision. Hey, if I'm going to decide on training, which is basically going back to school or taking another certification, that kind of thing, what are the cons of that? Well, let's be real. Obviously, time and money. It takes time to go through a training program. It costs money to go through a training program. Yeah, it'd be really nice if school were free. And the reality is, yes, it's an investment. And you know what? There's a thought here. On the pro side of that, when somebody does commit the time and money to a certification, they're really committed to what they're going to get out of it. And so that's in and of itself turning that into a pro. There is the reality of the time commitment and the money commitment. Now, on the pro side, in addition, career advancement opportunities. You see, there are many positions that request or require coach training now. For example, if somebody's a talent development professional, ATD, the Association for Talent Development, now cites coaching as a core competency for talent development professionals. If you look at the model from SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, coaching is considered a sub-competency. So increasingly we're seeing that. And on top of that, you now have companies that are hiring coaches because they have coaching programs. Above and beyond that, think about it this way. Back to a leadership role. Somebody who's got coaching skills is going to be more effective in that leadership role. So it's a true benefit in terms of career advancement. Now, beyond that, coaching is a business development opportunity. Many of you are here because you're thinking about doing coaching as a part-time or a full-time business. So the coach training, that certification, supports your credibility when you're putting yourself out there as a coach. And that makes a lot of sense. So let's explore more about what you get out of it. First off, when people choose certification, how do they do that? Well, here's what people have told me when they chose certification with us. Number one, a big factor they're looking at is credibility. Well, that makes a lot of sense. There are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of options out there in terms of coach training. Personally, I spent 6 months researching them, and I know people have spent longer than that. So how do you decide? Well, the credibility factor is going to be based on who's approved the program, what you can find out about it. It's also very often, who do you know that took the class? We find that a lot of people that come through our program found out about it because they know somebody who came through the program. So it's a big factor. Then, coaching tools. You see, some training programs run you through, you're out the door, you're done. Well, when you go through a training program, you want to know that in addition to what you learn during class, there are going to be additional tools available to you. And that's a big factor at the Center for Coaching Certification because we're very focused on providing those tools that support you. We have a coach login page where we provide hundreds of different things. So a lot of different resources in that regard. The ongoing support works hand in hand with that. So that we do continuing education. We have an online searchable directory for graduates promoting their coaching services. We, in fact, are actively working on contracts for coaching work and supporting people in that way. We publish a book every year, which does two things. It's great content and it means graduates have a chance to be a published author. So there's all kinds of things going on in terms of the ongoing support. It's also a professional development opportunity. You see, one of the things we offer is we are accredited to provide the continuing education units. So you have a lot of people that are looking for that because it's a requirement for another designation they have or for a job they have. So that we're able to do that is incredibly significant. And very often people have jobs where each year they're figuring out, okay, what's my plan this year in terms of developing myself? And this is a great opportunity. It also provides tremendous personal development opportunity. Huge benefit as far as outcomes from that coach training. So definitely benefits. All right, let's keep going. What else is important? Well, first off, the level of training. Back to that whole idea, how important is certification? Well, increasingly what we're finding is people are saying, are you a member of the International Coach Federation? And then they're also saying, are you credentialed with the International Coach Federation. So the level of training makes a difference. First off, the International Coach Federation only considers programs that are at least 30 hours. So that's a required first step for any program to be considered. To become a member of the International Coach Federation, you're required to have 60 hours of training. So what does that mean? There's two different approaches to getting the 60 hours. One is what we call the a la carte, where you do your 30 hours and then you do your next 30 hours. The other is they package it all together and you do it at one step. So your choice, pros and cons to each. The all together can be more expensive and it's a bigger commitment on the front end. The a la carte option is typically more affordable and it gives you more control in terms of time and money, planning each. So that's what we do at the Center for Coaching Certification. Our certified professional coach program is 30 hours and our certified master coach is 35 hours. Okay. Another consideration is location. So there are programs that are all online only. There are programs that are in specific brick and mortar locations, and there's everything in between. At the Center for Coaching Certification, we do classes in many major cities around the United States. We also offer them online. We find that the online option is very attractive for our international students, and it's also very attractive for people based on their schedule or their location. So all those options are available to you in terms of location. Next, cost. Obviously another big question. Program costs range, just like the amount of time ranges from a couple hours. I've even seen a program where if you just send them a check, they'll send you a certificate. Pretty amazing. Okay, so there are programs that are a few hours. There are programs that are 10 years long. There are also programs that are a few dollars all the way up. So when you think about, for example, universities have degree programs, they delve into the history, the philosophy, the theory, etc. of coaching. At the Center for Coaching Certification, we're very focused on making it realistic and practical and also ensuring the quality is there. So our certified professional coach program is $16.95. Our certified master coach program is $18.95. We find that makes us one of the more competitive programs that's actually approved by the International Coach Federation. Now, whatever program you decide on, what's essential is that it is developing all 11 of the coaching competencies. So what are those? They're sorted into 4 categories. The first category is setting the foundation of that coaching relationship, and there are 2 competencies there. One of the competencies is ethical guidelines. It goes into professional standards, how you're behaving in the coaching relationship. It also goes into confidentiality, record keeping, what's included in your agreement, etc. So having the ethical guidelines in place and really digging into those. You also want a program that supports you having the coaching agreement, both parts of it, the conversation side of it and the written agreement. So we actually model the conversation, provide different examples for it, and we provide 4 different examples of coaching agreements on our coach login page. So very, very important. Whatever you're looking at, you want to make sure you're getting that out of your program. Co-creating the relationship is your next area of competency. Trust and intimacy, developing that with your client, is a competency. It speaks to that #1 indicator of success being rapport in the coaching relationship. So how do you develop trust and intimacy? Well, yes, of course, it starts with the client knowing that you as a coach have been trained, that you have a code of ethics, what it is, what it means. You have a written agreement in terms of how this relationship works. That's foundational. And then trust and intimacy is going to be developed because the coach understands the client and flexes the coaching process based to who the client is, and because the coach is present and in the moment with the client. In the competency description, it talks about dancing in the moment. Love that language. So really there and present to who the client is in that moment. That's how you co-create the relationship. Then the competencies move into your communication skills. Active listening. The irony of active listening is most of us say, yeah, I'm a pretty good listener. And if you ask most of us, hey, do you think others listen well? More often than not, we're going to say, not so well. So there's a bit of a gap or a disconnect. In terms of a coaching conversation, what are the listening techniques that you want to use each and every time you're doing a coaching conversation? How do you do that? So the specific listening techniques for that. Questioning, powerful questioning. You see, coaching questions are different than any other type of question out there. And it's incredibly important to know the different types of questions and, very significantly, how to formulate powerful questions. So getting those specific tips. In terms of direct communication, it is so important how we say what we say, being clear, being direct, meaning to the point, being respectful of everyone, and also the difference between being positive and empowering versus being negative and limiting. So knowing what to say and how to say it makes a huge difference when you're really empowering an individual client. Then it goes on. The next category of competencies is facilitating learning and results. First, there is creating awareness. That's that exploration process with the client. Yes, you're using your powerful questions. It's exploring, expanding, and challenging their thinking, exploring different perspectives and possibilities. That's how, as a coach, you're creating awareness. And there's a lot behind that. How do you really understand the way the client is processing information, what they're getting out of it, how they're thinking and focused, and then support thought processes that are going to be effective in terms of moving them forward, because your competencies include designing actions. And when you design actions, you want actions people are going to actually take more than just, hey, I'm going to say it, I'm going to also do it. And then the planning, the goal setting in terms of how you're working together and how the client's moving forward. And of course, as a coach, how do you serve as an accountability partner? Checking in with the client on how they're doing and making sure they're acknowledging their own progress and success along the way. So these are the 11 competencies. You want to make sure whatever coach training you do covers all 11. Very, very important. Okay, what else do you look for in training? Well, we mentioned that credibility factor. How do you know if a training program is quality? First off, number one factor to consider is whether or not it's approved by the International Coach Federation. Now, the good news side of that, there's over 300 programs that are approved by the International Coach Federation. Wish I could say we were fewer. Yeah, there's lots of competition out there. It can almost become overwhelming. There are so many choices. You can get lost in exploring them all. So, yes, that's a key factor. Is it approved by the International Coach Federation? Now, an additional piece, and we're really excited to say, we are the only ICF-approved program that is also accredited by the International Association for Continuing Education and Training. So whereas the ICF is the gold standard in coaching, IACET is the gold standard in training and in certification programs. So what that means to you is the ICF approval tells you we're covering the competencies. The IACET accreditation tells you the design and delivery of the training program is quality. That's a big factor. Now, what else? We are also approved by the Human Resource Certification Institute as a continuing education program, a recertification credit hours. We are, in addition to that, approved by the Association for Image Consultants International. For any of you that are image consultants and doing your continuing education. The participants in the program that we do come from many of those areas and many professions where you have transferable skills. So we talked about ATD, the talent development, training professionals. Coaching is a core competency, the approval and the accreditation we have making a big difference. So yeah, we see a lot of ATD members in the class. We see a lot of human resource professionals from SHRM and HRCI take the program. Financial Planners Association. Now, sometimes people say, really, you get a lot of financial planners? Well, yes, we do, and the reason is it makes sense. You see, a financial planner is working with that individual on their money, and the coaching skills add tremendous value in terms of their outcomes. We see a lot of entrepreneurs. That's where you're seeing the NABO up there. I mentioned the Association of Image Consultants International. We also see a lot of members of the International Coach Federation. What's the reason for that? Once you're a coach, you still do continuing education. I love going to the different conferences and learning. It's a lifelong event for us as coaches. Now, IACET, because people know what that means in terms of the quality of training, design, and delivery. We see a lot of mental health professionals. They have transferable skills in their current profession. They're working with people to become whole. Well, in coaching, we're working with people based on the premise they are their own best expert and developing their future goals and objectives. So it's a natural continuation. A lot of consultants are doing coach training because it's a natural add-on in terms of services and in the work they're doing. And project managers, because they work with people in so many different ways. It's very much a leadership or managerial role applying coaching skills. Ultimately, who's going to take this? It is people with a passion for empowering others. And what's fun about this is knowing who some of your classmates are going to be. This gives you a pretty good sense of who they are. The people that benefit, the people that take this class are leaders, trainers, educators, consultants, managers, HR professionals, project managers, service providers, and business owners. So it's an incredible crowd. It's actually a gift to work with everybody in the program. All right, let's go back to what is this for you? In terms of career opportunities, a couple of statistics or quotes. You're probably familiar at the very least with these concepts. So Gallup did a poll, and the #1 reason people quit a job, guessing you've heard this, it's their boss. They're not leaving the company, they're leaving their boss. The Business News published a statistic on this in 2011. And I pull that, think about it this way. What was going on with the economy then? It was a down economy. People were grateful to have a job, and during that time period, 84% of them wanted out of it. And if you have that many people that want to leave, how engaged are they? And it goes back to, this is not about the company, it's about the boss, the immediate supervisor. So when we say coaching is a career opportunity, above and beyond the reality that there are jobs that request or require coach training, anybody in a leadership role who develops coaching skills is going to be more effective in that leadership role, and it is going to impact turnover, productivity, engagement on the job. So it's powerful because when you're that kind of a leader, people want you. Now, as far as the skill development opportunities, what do you get out of coach training? If we really boil it down, first off, communication skills. And communication skills apply in every conversation you have anywhere. That's at home, that's out with friends, and yes, of course, at work. It also develops your people skills, your ability to recognize and understand different people and flex to them. Again, that's applicable in everything you do. And of course, goal setting, a process for creating change and motivating the follow-through. Again, a skill that helps you at home, at work, etc. So very, very powerful personal skill development. Now go further. If you are considering this as a business, hey, are there opportunities? Well, here's what the ICF said. The hourly cost for coaching ranges from $100 an hour to $3,500. The median rate is $500. What does that really mean to you? Well, $3,500 is if you're going to coach Oprah Winfrey or something like that. On that 100 to that median of 500, if you're coaching in a space of personal life coaching, career coaching, that kind of thing, it tends to start closer to that $100 range. If you're coaching executives, you're closer to the $500 range. So that gives you an idea of where that goes. Now, another statistic worth knowing, we're thinking, oh yeah, there's too many coaches out there. There's one coach for every 29,000 people in the US and Canada, where we have the greatest number of coaches. So that tells you, yeah, there's lots of room there. So in terms of it being a business opportunity, whether you want to add it as a service to other services you're providing, whether you want to do it full-time or part-time, yes, there is tremendous opportunity. It's really about knowing how to develop that business, how to make yourself available as a coach. So let's talk about the program itself. First off, the Certified Professional Coach Program. We start with live online classes. So what's different between a class in the program and this one right now? Here's the main difference. You're live. So right now, all of you are in silent mode. That means, yeah, you're observing. I'm live. You're just observing. So in class, you're actually live on your speaker and microphone or on your telephone headset. That means you're talking, you're interacting, you're asking questions, answering questions, etc. Plus, you actually see who's in the class with you. You get a list of names and you're discussing with each other. So when we do those classes, the first class we do is called About Coaching. And that is really digging into understanding exactly what coaching is and how it works. And what's important about that class is it's how do you have this conversation with a prospective client? We model it in the About Coaching webinar in addition to giving you that insight. We also take time to look at the core competencies there. Then we do a class on ethics. And in the class on ethics, it's very interactive. I consistently hear that. People are like, yeah, I was kind of afraid it was going to be a boring class. And it was really fun because what we do is we say, okay, what does this mean? Hey, if this is the situation, what do you do? How does that apply to you? And it's all about the application for you as a coach. And it's based on, yes, the code of ethics from the International Coach Federation. Then the class on understanding your client, it's fun. I love that class. It's a blast. What are we doing there? We're saying, okay, how do you recognize who your client is, how they're thinking, how they're processing, how they're functioning, what are their strengths and their weaknesses right in this moment? Being present in the moment, dancing in the moment, remember? And then how do you adjust to them based on that? Because this is going to support, yes, your coaching presence and really developing that rapport because you understand them and flex to them. Then we move into communication and give you very specific techniques for each of the communication competencies to really develop and enhance your own. And from there, focus and motivation. This supports creating the awareness. It's about the planning and goal setting, how to do it effectively, how to support the client so they are motivated and follow through. And of course, yes, this is part of how you serve as the accountability partner. Now, with each class, you're going to have a research and practice assignment. So classes are 90 minutes, and there's an expectation that your homework will take at least 90 minutes as well, because you do get credit for the time you invest in your homework. So the first couple classes, it's additional research, and the next couple of classes, you're practicing the techniques because people skills, communication skills, yeah, we use those in every conversation we have. So it's practicing those in conversations you're having anyway. Then we move into your coaching practicum. And we're going to give you a very specific process while you're learning coaching so that you then, once you experience that and really get it, will know how to develop your own and make it uniquely yours. And during the coaching practicum, you're going to coach, you're going to be coached, and you're going to observe. So first off, yeah, of course you want to coach. That's what you're here in training for. Makes a lot of sense. And it's also very important to be coached. After all, if you're going to coach someone else, it's important to know what it's like having that experience. Being an observer is awesome because it gives you a chance to be aware of what's going on both sides of the table while it's happening. So it's a fabulous learning process. The trainer's there with you. At the end of the practicum, we have a case study that you complete. It's a great tool in terms of overviewing what happens from a very initial conversation all the way through dealing some changes and challenges, etc., in the coaching relationship. And with that overview, you've basically outlined things as well as reviewed for yourself that coaching relationship. It is open book. We do walk through it with you. Then, after certification, first off, everyone who is interested in doing this as a business, you're going to be glad to know there is a recorded program on the business of coaching. It's 90 minutes long. There's one on marketing. Both of those are on the coach login page. In addition to that, every month there is a free call for any graduate ever. You can sign up on our coach login page, and it's a Q&A. You get to call in, participate, ask questions about business and about marketing and have a discussion. And I'll share with you, those discussions are different every time we do one. Maybe somebody wants to talk about, gee, how do I network effectively, or what do I want to do with my website, or what else can I do to build my business? Hey, what do I want to know about some of these pieces of the business? So it's up to the people that sign up. You get to ask your questions. It's pure Q&A session. We also do continuing education. So maintaining your certification requires 12 clock hours of continuing education every 2 years. We actually schedule 24 clock hours every 2 years. We do classes on all different topics for coaching. We've got classes coming up on coaching language, on conflict coaching, etc. So any of those free continuing education programs that we offer on our website under opportunities will count toward continuing education for your certification. In addition to that, we will accept anything you take through the International Coach Federation. We also will accept whatever you take on coaching or on the coaching competencies. So it's very open in terms of accepting that. It's simply a matter of submitting your continuing education to renew certification. Now, the Certified Master Coach Program, professional being the first 30 hours, the Master Coach being the next 35. What's covered there? First off, we again start with the webinar series. The first one we do is called Group and Team Coaching. And the reason we do that first is because part of the program, you will actually be involved in group and team coaching. So fabulous to get the foundational information in place and really explore that. In terms of being a coach, this is a fabulous service for your clients, and it's a fabulous business builder for you as a coach. So group and team coaching. From there, we're really digging deep into each of the 11 core competencies. So you've gotten a lot of foundational information in the initial program. Now we're going to go even further. We're going to get specific with the do's and don'ts for each of the competencies. So ethics and agreements, that's that foundational area of competencies. What are the do's? What are the don'ts? What are additional considerations? Then we move into the coaching process, your competencies under co-creating the relationship. And we move forward with people and communication skills, very specifically those communication competencies. And then creating change with confidence, your competencies in your fourth category, where you're creating awareness and designing actions, being their accountability partner, etc. We also do a class on time and money coaching. This is significant. Think back to the study I shared with you on Harvard Business Review, and they said, hey, 76% of the time personal issues come up. Well, guess what? Some of the more common personal issues wrap around time and money. And that's a great example for you as a coach to be aware. In our competencies, it talks about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Very often these are uncomfortable topics for people, and they are such huge influencing factors for your client. It's important that as a coach, you give the client the space to think it through and figure out what they want to do. So we talk about that. Now, with the Master Coach program, your homework is divided. You do some of it before class and some after. So the idea is you're thinking about ahead of time, hey, what is this? How does this work for me? Where am I at with this? And then we have class, and then you go, okay, now where am I going with this? The questions are provided to you in advance. So you'll have questions you're answering ahead of class, questions after class. And of course, the more you use real examples in this, the more you're going to get out of it. Then the practicum itself. First off, part of the practicum is the group coaching. So what does that mean? That means you will be the coach for everybody else in class for one of the group sessions. So you get to practice and play with being a group coach. You're also going to participate in the group coaching when your classmates are the coach. So what that means is you are going to experience different processes and different technologies for group coaching. Really supports your success in that area. You also are going to do trainer-supervised individual coaching. You will be involved in interviewing classmates, choosing who you want as a coach. Then you'll be scheduling those coaching sessions. And in the Master Coach level, it's the coach, the client, and the trainer. That's it. So it's really direct, hands-on involvement in that regard. Then at the end of the coaching practicum, you do a final report where you're sharing, hey, this is a coaching situation, this is what I did, this is what happened, this is what I learned from it. After that is graduation. Now the Master Coach program is completely virtual. We do it online, so we have participants from all over the place. We do have a Master Coach class for those of you who are graduates of the Professional Coach class. We have a Master Coach class that is starting Friday. We have another one that is going to be evenings starting in another month or so here. Great question. Those of you who are looking at the Certified Professional Coach program, there is a schedule on the website. So you can do a program overview of the Certified Professional Coach program. You can also look at the class schedules, and you can look based on city, you can look based on month that you want to take it. You can also look at, hey, I want it purely online. So a lot of different ways, lots of classes coming up. We've got, let's see, next are Minneapolis, Atlanta, Chicago's coming up, Boston's coming up, New York's coming up. So yeah, check that out online. Now, whichever program you do, as with any education or training effort, the more you put into it, the more you gain from it. All right, we are coming up on time, used up our time. So what's your next step? First off, I promised you something at the beginning of the call. If you want it, I've got that gift for you now. A free 30-minute session. Now, some of you want to use it for coaching so you get to experience it and have a taste or an example on that. You can pick whatever you want coaching on. Others of you say, you know, I want 30 minutes, and what I really want to do is just ask some more questions or explore this further or whatever else. It's your choice. How is that going to work? Well, after we end the call today, I will email all of you with a link to the recording, and if you reply to that email, I'll send you a link to my calendar. You can go into that calendar link and schedule that 30-minute session. You can be right in my calendar, pick a time that works for you, put in your name and phone number, click all the way through, and I will call you on that date at that time. So that makes it super easy for you to get that 30 minutes. Now, when you decide, yes, I do want to take the next step, we have an application. Filling out the application itself is free. It gives you a chance to say, okay, this is what's required for this, and it gives you a chance to tell us about you. We get to know your background, and you get to tell us about your interest in the coaching. That helps us as trainers be more effective when we're interacting with you. There is an application for the professional coach program. There is a separate application for the master coach program. Now, when you know which class you do want to take, your next step in terms of holding your space in that class is paying for it. And when you submit an application, it will take you there, so when you're ready, you can grab that spot. I do want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here. Definitely appreciate your time and your participation. Recognizing that we have used our time, those of you that have other things scheduled, thank you. Thank you for the privilege of having the conversation. Definitely looking forward to being of service. Those of you that want to hang around, if you have additional questions, I'm happy to do that. You can either type them in on the question panel, or if you raise your hand, I'm happy to unmute you and have you come in live. So appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the thank you comments in the question panel. So thank you all for that. In terms of your additional questions, okay, so I've got, you want to see how to do on the coach website, how to get there as far as the finding the class schedule, that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make that super easy because I've got a couple of you asking this. So here's how to work with that. First off, on the website, and here I am on the home page, this left-hand picture underneath it says Certified Professional Coach Training. If you put your mouse over that box, it'll give you the drop-down menu. And the second item on the drop-down menu is the class schedules. You click on that, it'll take you to the class schedules. Now here's where you can choose. These are the upcoming live online classes where everything's online. Then you've got the combination classes of online plus face-to-face. They're listed by city. If you want to look at class based on the schedule, and some people do that because the first 5 classes for a program that includes face-to-face are online. You can be anywhere for that part of it, and it means being in that particular city for 2 days of live face-to-face. It does work for people to explore doing a combination class based on schedule. So you can simply select the month of the year you want to be looking at, and by clicking on that month or that time period, it'll take you there. The Master Coach program is set up the same way, where you have your program overview and then you have your class schedule. So great question there. Thank you for that. Let's see, and I believe from your comments in the question panel, looks like we have answered the questions that all of you have. So very, very excited. Glad it was helpful to you. And yes, I'll get that email out and look forward to having additional conversation and being of service. So thank you, everybody, for your time today and for the privilege of having this conversation with you and being considered. So thank you.